Hello and welcome to FinTech Talk. I'm your host, Charles Orton-Jones. Today we're looking at automating compliance. This is the age of AI, and artificial intelligence has the potential to completely transform the field of compliance and regulation. But what's the best way of doing it? How can you get the most out of automating compliance? Well, the premise of FinTech Talk is always to gather the world's leading experts on any given subject, and that's what we've done today. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our panel. We have Alex Tsepayev. Alex, if you turn your camera on, Alex is Chief Strategy Officer at the institutional brokerage group B2 Prime. Alex, great to have you with us.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Charles. And it's an honor to be here.
So good. We have Denitsa Rebane. Denitsa is a familiar face on FinTech Talk. She's a walking encyclopedia of compliance. Denitsa, great to have you with us. Denitsa is Deputy Head of Sanctions at one of the largest banks in the US. Denitsa, we're not going to say which US bank, but I think everyone will have heard of it.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you for having me again.
So good to see you. And we have Ty Francis. Ty is Chief Advisory Officer at the world's largest pure play ethics and compliance consultancy, LRN. Ty has a long history working in compliance. He was Vice President at the New York Stock Exchange's Governance Services Division, and he's a co-founder, when you're in New York, of New York Welsh, which is the social club for Welshes in the Big Apple. So if you have any affiliation to Wales and fancy hanging out with some of your fellow countrymen, that's the place to go. As a Welshman, I can say it sounds absolutely fantastic. Ty, great to see you.
Thank you, and with a name like Jones, thanks for the shout out.
I can resist it. So yeah, let's pull up a news story because yeah, compliance and AI have been in the news. It's a huge talking point as firms rush to embrace AI in any way they can. UK Parliamentary Committee reports The Guardian of all newspapers with a warning. Bank of England warns, FCA warns companies this wait and see approach, this embrace and get chaotic with AI may not be the best approach. Ty, just set the scene here. What's going on? It sounds as if companies are embracing automation and compliance, but it may not always be in the best way.
Well, look, I mean, look, it's a two-sided tale here. It's no surprise that the Treasury Select Committee is warning that they feel that consumers and the financial system at large is being exposed, as they said, to serious harm by this, as you said, wait and see approach. Um, while most city firms are already using AI, regulators and governments still haven't kind of introduced any specific rules. So instead, they're hoping that the market relies instead on the existing regulatory kind of frameworks we have. And I guess MPs are concerned that this kind of what they call regulatory ambiguity creates risk for some of those vulnerable customers. Examples could be, biased credit scoring models, automated claims leading to unfair denials, and AI generated financial guidance. So, they are looking at this and, they're worried that it's going to increase fraud and cyber exposure. And also, I guess in a way, it's going to, it'll concentrate some of the systemic risk in a handful of like large US, predominantly tech providers. And that could amplify that herd behavior you see, which happens during economic shocks. We only have to remember the CrowdStrike issue, a few months ago. So I think critically, there's a lack of clarity on accountability when AI-driven systems and decisions and why they can cause harm. So I guess the committee is calling for what they call AI-focused stress testing and some clear FCA guidance on how existing consumer protection rules apply to AI, and explicitly, how those accountability frameworks are getting responded to. And I think I would expect a lot more pressure on the FCA and PRA to translate some of those high-level principles everyone's talking about into more operational guidance. I still think there's a lot of uncertainty over whether responsibility sits with data providers or model developers, cloud providers, or the regulated firms themselves. And I think this creates a real exposure, and especially under SMCR or consumer duty. But let's not forget that without AI-specific rules, the FCA's consumer duty already requires firms to evidence fair outcomes. So I would hazard a guess that there are a lot of AI deployments that are unlikely to meet this bar anyway today. And if we continue to be reliant on some of these big, what I call US hyperscalers, and the more opaque models, I think it's going to create more third-party risk management obligations that I don't think a lot of firms are ready to kind of embrace. And this shifts that AI level risk from firm-wide to market-wide. And the
Sure.
framing invites this kind of stress testing and scenario planning rather than this kind of wait and see light touch guidance.
Well, see, I mean, Denitsa, what are you seeing out there? I mean, it sounds as if, the embrace of AI is so frenzied and people are so enthusiastic. They may cut a few corners, and it's a hell of a job for the regulators, isn't it, to keep up with an industry that's moving so fast. So is there a danger that, what are you seeing out there? Are people really rushing into this?
There have been some cases. I guess from the financial sector, not so much. I think regulators are also asking and being more interested in what type of AIs people use and for what purposes. But they, as Ty rightfully mentioned, would more or less expect the same thing. Can you explain the outcome? Are you accountable for that outcome? And what's your governance and controls around it? So, but we have seen some interesting cases of mass AI adoption where a company was recently in the news, Salesforce. They have fired a very large population of their employees, human employees, substituting them with digital ones. However, things backfired, and they have now lessons to share around that. I think the hype is interesting, and I think people should not forget that at this stage, at least today in 2026, when we talk about AI, there are important still learning that needs to be happen and control. So this these models that are being developed must ensure two things. One, to have human in the loop for control purposes to make sure that everything's working as it's intended to be, but also human before the loop. So from who is the AI learning, right? Imagine you had very poor performing employees with bad results, and AI would be successfully replicating all their results and making the same errors as they did. I think teaching the models to do and to behave in a certain way is also critically important when you're adopting or getting into the AI rush.
For sure. Perhaps we just talk about what AI is being used for. I mean, Alex, are you able just to discuss, what it is we're really referring to when we talk about compliance? And if you want to talk about what goes in your company, B2 Prime, you're very welcome to.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Look, I'll be honest, I'm very, very huge fan of AI, and I really believe that any technology needs a wild west to develop. And now, when we are talking about regulating AI, we are talking about the technology which evolves much faster than the regulatory or legislation cycle. And we could look at internet, for example. Internet came up in 80s. It was widely adopted in 90s, but the first laws, the first bills regulated the internet, they came into force like in our millennium. So we fully embraced AI, so we already replaced half of the developers, including quality assurance engineers, front-end developers, designers with Claude Code. And I can tell it works perfectly. In terms of compliance, unfortunately, not so much. But again, what I'm talking about, that technology is evolving. 6 months ago, the state of the models was completely different from what we can see now. And all the AI agents we see now, it's not just one single LLM model. You have on the backstage anomaly detection system, graph models, time series, regime shifts models, and you can build multiple AI agents which will be arguing with each other and voting. And I totally agree that at current stage, there need to be a human behind the wheel, somebody who controls it. But at the same time, look, why I believe that we're gonna implement AI everywhere. Let's take a compliance officer who has 500 cases. Isn't this person biased? Same as model. The model will use the same policy, the same risk appetite approach as this person. So in reality, What I see is that there are a lot of fears about adopting of AI, but the same was about internet, electricity, steam. Every general purpose technology comes through a very painful journey.
Sure. Ty, just continue that. What do you think, AI does really well at the moment? Because when we talk about compliance, it's a big field, and there are some tasks it's very well suited to, and others people are still trying to find applications for. So, what are the easiest applications?
Well, AI, we've been using AI for years and years and years, and I think that the biggest problem that a lot of companies have is they treat AI risk as like a cyber risk, and it's not. It's AI is part of every single thing we do. So, we should be looking at AI as bribery or culture or, behavior because it's part of that. So you can't really regulate one specific piece. Provocative questions would be if a human made the same opaque decision as your AI did, would compliance sign it off? So, and if not, the problem is governance. It's not the technology. We've been embedding compliance in risk teams for years, looking at things like SARs and active monitoring. It's created a lot of efficiencies in banking and financial services where they can monitor hundreds and thousands of different reports and queries, whereas compliance officers would have been completely overrun by that. So I think you can't bunch AI into one thing. You have to look at how it's been deployed. And again, as Denitsa said, you've got to ask about is it fair? Are we looking at AI in the same way we're looking at other things like with consumer duty? Is it fair? Does it cause harm? Can you control it? And does it enable and support customers to pursue their financial objectives? So again, we're using it already. It's just a case of a lot of companies are pushing hard form reform within their organizations and not stopping to think about what the benefits of some of this AI are doing. So compliance departments are using data all the time. We encourage customers to take data from training, from culture surveys, from code of conduct issues, from complaints investigations, and create models so people can identify, and not just benchmark behind, but look at predictive trends. And AI is great at doing that. But also AI will take some of the leading data and some of the kind of abstract data that a human wouldn't see and piece that together.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really important point that AI now has actually been around quite a long time. Every department's using it. I mean, Denitsa, talk about best practice here. I mean, we've seen some companies creating now their own, AI department, sort of head of AI, chief AI officer. Is that a sort of a good approach here? Because what's going on in compliance is being mirrored in multiple other departments, so it's not being developed in isolation, is it? What's your personal recommendation on how companies deal with this? I mean, should every company have a chief AI officer to handle all this?
Not sure if a chief AI officer is, necessary. I would say it rather depends on the size of the company, the data that they need to operate, right? And the scope that AI would cover. Maybe in the future, each company will have a chief. How do you chief AI officer?
Yeah.
It's very possible as AI is going to be in a lot. As you said, it's already being used, and it's more and more into our world. Um, and the concerns also that were mentioned there is that a lot of the jobs and work being done by people is being replaced. So I guess mastering how to use and navigate in the new AI world will be important. So I guess such positions as chief AI officers will be becoming more and more relevant. Um, yeah, I can see those appearing in larger organizations where AI is probably used in multiple departments that require different types of governance or different types of models, as Alex mentioned. So likely that there would be such even teams and departments that would be focusing entirely on this.
Okay. I mean, Alex, I'm interested in how this stuff gets, developed because things are moving so fast, and you may find even junior employees come up with great ideas. They have a natural capacity to tinker around with AI. In your organization, how does it work? I mean, who decides which AI to use. You talked about using multiple AIs and allowing them to vote on certain issues. Just give us an insight into how innovation is handled in your organization.
For us, it was very cost heavy because we bought all possible AI models and then we started trying to apply it into different processes. That was a bit chaotic. We implemented position of chief AI officer, but then what we realized that, again, like Ty said, it's a problem of governance. And with the current state of the models, you don't need to have a developer. You just, as in any change management, you need to have a champion inside every department who understands all the processes, policies, and governance of particular department. And then what we did, I took my best compliance officer who was like very AI driven, and I told him, okay, next month you're gonna learn AI. Purchase every possible course and you need to focus only on learning how would you make change through AI. And that's what we did in every department. That was cost heavy, painful, but it worked in 60% of cases. But again, in compliance, it's a bit difficult now because, we are trying to implement this automation on every layer, but then um, to it's too regulated sector. In the development, it's much simpler because it's more like a Wild West.
Wow, I love your approach, sending everyone on an AI course, buying all the AIs, trialing everything. That really is in at the deep end. I mean, Ty, there must be people watching this thinking, our organization's trying that. It's overwhelming. Can't some of this stuff be outsourced? I mean, LRN, is this the kind of, work you're doing for organizations, steering them through this? Because it sounds absolutely overwhelming having to handle the
Well,
number of models, the number of options out there.
what we try to help people do is we focus on outcomes, not activities, right? So we try to focus on how is the training we're providing helping the employees understand their jobs better. We're not trying to teach employees to be compliance officer or AI experts. We're just helping them get these obstacles out of their way. Look, there are certain tasks that can be fully automated by AI. And I said that before, transaction monitoring, sanction screening, policy attestation, all the basic robotic things that is a yes or no answer. Where human oversight comes into place are things like, final credit or insurance decisions where you might have vulnerable customers who are disproportionately, affected. What we have to realize is the behavioral part of this. And it's all about training and understanding. What you don't want is you don't want a junior employee sitting in the middle of the night looking at a contract and thinking, I've got to get this signed off because my sales manager wants me to do it. But I don't understand everything in it. I'm just going to drop this entire contract into ChatGPT, not your company's enterprise one, but just ChatGPT. And all of a sudden, you just released a ton of your company's IP and legal documentation into the world. And you get the answer back and you make a decision based on it. But you haven't double checked what that decision is actually made. Some of the biggest issues we're going to see is all about, customer understanding and explainability, where customers need to understand how decisions affect them have been made, right? So we're talking about that black box modeling, determining kind of eligibility. So there are certain things that there needs human oversight, but there need to be guide rails for how customers are using their AI and how employees are using AI. I would say that all firms should be encouraging AI 100%. I mean, it's making my life, it's making my company's life more effective. We're creating training where we have AI enabled kind of mentors within our training that you can ask it questions. And this is all kind of consumed within a very controlled box of the information we're providing. So as you're taking training on bribery or financial controls, you're asking the AI mentor, am I doing the right thing? What happens if I give a regulator a bottle of wine? Is that okay? So rather than having to leave that, go into ChatGPT, get an answer you may not really believe or understand, you're creating these guide rails and you're creating these sandboxes. So when we're talking about AI governance, and Alex said it perfectly, this is about governance. This is not about technology. It's using governance artifacts like model cards, decision logs, and escalation thresholds to evidence that oversight. Where do you need the oversight the most? And then you use kind of any risk materialization to make sure that those areas are covered properly.
Okay. And to any of our viewers, if you have a question and you're watching on Zoom, pop it in the chat box. We'll have a look at it. I'll put it to our panel. But Denitsa, it sounds as if, Ty's echoing what you were saying. that you talked about human in the loop, human before the loop. Is this the way to deal with this, really? That all decisions should have humans invigilating them, understanding them, stopping anything chaotic happening them. But a lot of companies will say, well, constantly having a human overseeing this stuff takes away some of the savings. How do you balance it out, Denitsa? How do you get it right?
Well, $1 million question, right? Like if I answer this one today, but I do think that you don't have to oversee each and every decision. I agree with you, and that the use of AI have to be cautious. What Ty said, verifying that decision, thinking if you are exposing the data where it shouldn't be. In companies, you usually have very good structure, what's confidential, what is non-public information. So popping this in ChatGPT or somewhere is certainly not a great idea. Um, Everyone makes mistakes, right? Humans make errors too. AI may have a different margin of error, but makes error too. The idea is not to entirely replicate or make everything correct. The goal is to have better, faster decisions or better, faster work analysis performed, and not just replace the human entirely. There still need to be some kind of collaboration, some kind of oversight over those decisions. It's not, we're not at the at the stage maybe where we are ready to take everything as it is, because there can be various errors, I think, and I'm not sure if AI can entirely handle the judgment and ethics in an escalation, in a case, without having that human input or human understanding. Yes, they can help with volume, with speed, with analyzing, going through data, through a lot of letters, messages, contracts, etc. However, that final judgment, when it comes to judgment or reporting or anything more human in nature, I think that is where we still need to see development, or otherwise would require to have presence of a human.
Okay, Alex, it sounds as if there's actually quite a lot can go wrong. How have you been able to map out the potential risks in your organization? And what have you identified as maybe, some unexpected threats that you were not so obvious in the first place?
Well, we never identified any threats. We identified a lot of costs. So this stuff is pretty expensive. In terms of threats, I think that pretty serious one is that people over relying on AI, and especially when we talk about legislation, local, I don't know, cases, some kind of precedents. AI is still not ideal here. Even the models, specialized models, I mean, they still might make mistakes and errors. And when person is relying on AI too much, the person kind of, we lose ability to search information any other way. And even, myself, I talk with ChatGPT more than I talk to my partner, I think. And then the question, can I still Google information? Can I still go to and really analyze the case, go deep, understand all potential implications of any decision or not? And people, when they switch to AI, they lose this kind of skill. So the main risk is when people are over relying on AI, they kind of stop working. They think that AI will do everything for them, and this is a very big mistake, because I believe in several years maybe we will be at that stage, but not now.
Can we just zero in on this idea of black box thinking? I don't think that's well enough understood. Having talked to people about AI, there's an assumption that, some engineer must know how the AI works. But Alex, that's not the case, is it? With some neural networks, AIs are able to, I don't know, decode a visual image, a picture, and identify an orange. But it's not clear how the AI has done that. It's been trained on massive data sets and come up with its own internal methodologies. And actually, a lot of these things are internally opaque. I mean, Alex, just talk us through this term black box in terms of AI.
Well, that's true. Because, when the system becomes so complex, even person who developed the system kind of lose control. And if you are not trained in this, if you don't know what's behind the AI, and frankly, very few people can understand, can ask AI, okay, what was your logic? What was behind that? Even few people can go through the code. And that's why the system which develops itself, it poses certain threats because you're totally right. We don't understand the logic behind this. We think we do, but that's not true.
Okay. And
I
just
think,
wonder,
to,
you go
to
ahead.
Alex's point, I think there is a rush. And look, I don't want to see regulators make the same mistake as they did in 2008 when they tried to regulate a lot of the financial services, financial vehicles, without understanding what those kind of measures were. And it kind of exacerbated the issue. Because I think if you look at the regulatory framework that's in the UK right now, it already demands that firms deliver, fair outcomes, and that's under consumer duty, right? It already asks that they assign clear personal accountability, especially for senior managers, and that's SMCR. But also, we're asking firms to prevent systemic consumer harm during disruption, right? And that's operational resiliency. So I don't think AI sits outside these regimes. It activates all three of those simultaneously. So I think having frameworks and governance frameworks, compliance frameworks within corporations to kind of help employees understand their obligations and be able to explain to customers why they're doing what they're doing. I think that's going to be more important than trying to curtail the use of AI. Train your employees, especially under SMCR, your senior managers, on what they need to do. How can they explain a decision that's made by an AI system to a customer and give them, I think Simon Sinek said, transparency isn't telling everything, everyone, every time. It's all about, context. I think that's what we need to look at is giving customers and giving employees context of why decisions are being made. Otherwise, trust erodes, right? Because regulators and customers alike are going to all ask what the system decided, who decided it, why it decides it, and can it be challenged? Can it be overridden? And then, what the decision outside of that would be. Just like you would ask a manager, just like you would ask, you would go to your compliance office and say, why is that policy written the way it is? Why do I have to apply that AML policy to this transaction? AI is no different. And I think that blanketing AI is this horrible bogey word is damaging because then people will make an knee-jerk reaction and stop using it. And remember, this AI is helping people as well. Again, I talked about sanctions controls. I talked about transaction monitoring. It's helping banks and helping financial institutions monitor so many more risks than they did before. But it's also looking at systemic risks and cross-border issues and pulling all of those future-looking horizon scanning issues back into place. But all that data is going to be useless unless you have set up frameworks that the culture of those organizations are allowing senior managers and allowing middle managers to make the decisions based on ethical decision making, not expediency.
I love that. Just a really common
Exactly.
sense approach. Denitsa, go ahead if you want to. Sorry,
Yeah, sorry.
Alex, so you're nodding away. Alex, go ahead. I can see you nodding away once I was speaking.
Yeah. I just
Either
wanted to
he was
say,
nodding with me, or he was like, "No, he's talking about."
no. I totally agree. AI doesn't change what we do. AI change how we do this. And in reality, it's the same decision. The business model and financial market is not changing with AI. So AI just helps us to make the decision faster and ideally more objective.
Okay, that's very reassuring. Again, Denitsa, it sounds as therefore, although this is a chaotic industry and things are moving fast, as I say, just by bringing some fairly common sense, time-honored principles that have been operating in the financial world for a long time, it's possible to build good governance. So, Denitsa, are you relaxed? Are you feeling that, yeah, there are actually perfectly straightforward ways of innovating with AI while staying within a strong regulatory framework?
Yes, I think AI is not new to financial institutions. I remember maybe 2 or now 3 years ago, Google and HSBC partnered in some AI program for transaction monitoring. You know, certainly there are ways. There is support and curiosity out of the regulators. I don't think they're necessarily prohibiting. Even in the EU, where there is the existing EU AI directive, it's not created in a way to prevent innovation, to prevent adoption of AI in the financial industry or elsewhere. So I do believe it's possible, yes, and I think a lot of firms are taking advantage, and a lot of processes that were very monotonous or burdensome for humans can be certainly replaced with machine learning or AI, where it can improve and focus compliance on what truly matters, or more complex cases that require more decision making and different types of reporting. So yeah, I believe there is a bright future for AI in the, in the industry, and yeah, looking forward to see what that will be in different cases.
And just to flesh it out, because it's something I'm interested in, just Alex, maybe talk about the pressure to cut costs. We're talking about great theory here. We're talking about best practice. We've seen what can go wrong in financial organizations, though, that when there's a sensation that, or a feeling that AI can strip out costs, eliminate the human element, there can be pressure at departmental level or board level to go faster than is merited. You know, Alex, how dangerous is it? The banks here think, actually, in fact, we can really reduce headcount aggressively if we automate, we cut away the human invigilation. Is it a realistic threat?
Realistic. I have two cases. First case, what was us when we implemented the agents for our support purposes. The next day, I got like 10 or 15 requests from customers. Guys, can you please give us back humans? And just, okay, no worries. And the second case happened with one of our vendors. Their owner is also AI enabler, and he fired a majority of his L1 and L2 support teams. And it led to the situation where in 3 or 4 months he needed to hire back the whole team. So because you see, like sometimes we have unrealistic expectations that tomorrow AI can change everything. No, it can't. Not tomorrow. Maybe one day.
Okay. And finally, let's just end on a note of optimism. And Denitsa, just talk about the future of compliance. We've got amazing technology, say, removing all the monotonous tasks. AI is already here, but it sounds as if, despite this warning from the UK Parliament and the Bank of England to take things slowly, that things are on a good path, aren't they? I mean, we've explored some of the dangers, we've explored some of the ethics problems, some of the need for guardrails, but fundamentally, Denitsa, this is a great time to be working in compliance.
I do think so, yes. I
And
agree.
yep, yep, cool. And yeah, and Alex, just to finish this off, just tell us about the positive impact it's made. You talked about the headcount you've been able to save, investing heavily in all the costs. But I don't want this to be a negative episode. We've certainly explored some of the difficulties. But just tell us about the potential you see for automating compliance.
Uh, wow, it's amazing. So my product managers, who's in charge of our trading platform, managed to develop the whole new user interface. It took him 1 week, just knowing the context and using Cloud AI. Uh, Before, the same task for another product took 3 months because we had a huge team. There were a lot of agile ceremonies and rituals. Everybody needed to be coordinated. Everybody needed to have all these conversations, daily meetings, weekly meetings, reports. And one person did what the whole team was not able to do,
Okay.
just knowing the context and using Cloud Code.
And yeah, just to finish this off, Ty, we've actually got a question from the audience, Marianne Gibson. I think this is a lovely note to end on, which is how firms can turn compliance automation into a competitive differentiator rather than just a cost center or risk mitigation tool. How can they really get the best out of this?
Well, look, I think that we have to move away from looking at we need to monitor real world outcomes, right? And we always talk about monitoring outcomes and activities. I think if you're looking at automation and AI just to reserve service costs, but then complaint volumes shoot up, then you're not doing a great job, right? So any consumer duty shifts that question from does the model work to is it delivering a fair outcome? When you're looking at efficiency with compliance, you know, you start with looking at the mundane robotic processes that your compliance officers spend all of their time on. And then they make a risk decision, just like you have a materiality risk decision in your company. What could I be doing more of, and what do I need to be doing less of? What could somebody or what could a machine do that I can't do? And then what could somebody else be doing in that place? I think it's important and it's crucial right now in the stage we are that you need human oversight. You need that, you know, the HI, the human intelligence part of this. Because at the end of the day, somebody's going to ask you that question, and the regulators are going to ask the same questions as well. And, you know, I'll give you a very blunt, bored takeaway that, you know, if your firm at the end of all this can't answer, cannot clearly answer like basic questions like what AI was used for, where it was used, who was accountable, how harm was prevented, how the decisions were explained, and how systems fail safely, then you don't have any AI strategy at all. You have unmanaged regulatory risk. So compliance can really help with AI, and AI can help with compliance, but you have to make sure that you're not blanketing it. You know, you're not just removing the human interface just to save a cost. You're removing your human interface to become more efficient. And remember, you know, if you're passing those decisions on to somebody else, would you trust the AI model the same way you trust a senior manager? And again, it's all about data. It's all about training. You know, we use prompts, we train AI the same way we should be focusing on training employees. Okay. So, you know, we're training right now employees the same way that we're employing training managers. When managers have got completely different obligations, they have to deal with harassment, complaints, promotions, firing, investigations, when basic employees don't. So we need to train managers the same way we're training these AI systems to become more automated.
All right, I think that's such a powerful insight. Well, guys, thank you so much for talking us through the nuances of automating compliance. There's a tremendous amount of insights in there. So from myself, from Alex, from Danitza, and from Ty, and the whole production team at FinTech Talk, thank you for joining us.